Progress is not linear, just like focus cannot be constant. Races come and go, and for every period of training and preparing for races, focusing on getting done what needs to be done and experiencing the high of a race, there is also the inevitable down after the race is finished, a sense of what next. And some call it the post-race blues, and we've done enough races that have meant something to us to know what happens on the other side of that race, but also we've learned how you overcome those thoughts and feelings and you keep marching forwards. But of course, celebrate your achievements first.
And that brings us back out here to training, which is the thing that you do all of the time, the process you go through that brings it all together and allows you to do the crazy things that you do. But sometimes, and usually, let's be honest, it's after a bigger race, you can be left heading into training feeling kind of empty, without a sense of focus, with a loss of purpose, and just actually feeling sad. And I'm here to tell you that that is very, very common. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to pick apart the reasons for it, but also how to avoid it, because we've made our own mistakes, and we're going to do it using Mary's ultramarathon as the example. And I know a lot of the time in my training plan videos that I put out there, when people comment and let me know that they finished a plan, I ask what's next, and that is a little bit in jest, because of course what I really want first off is for them to really enjoy and embrace their achievements, and it's the same with any race. The first thing you've got to do is really take it all in and enjoy it before you move on, because whatever you've just achieved is probably massive. I mean, it's not all bad when days are beautiful like this, but I have to do a day of work and then we're going to pick it apart with Mary. So let's just cut to that.
Which leads us to here. Not being able to film in the studio because the sunlight is pouring through the window and we look like the Teletubbies babies. And we're sitting down on our sofa, but this is perfect because what we really want to talk about is the 3 stages of, thank you Winnie, the 3 stages of how you move on after a race. So I think it's closure first, as in learning what you can learn from the race, you know, that can make you a better athlete. Then we go on to separation. You need a defined period. It doesn't have to be long, but a defined period between that race and training and whatever is next.
Yeah.
And the final bit is renewal of purpose and focus.
Like a new beginning.
A new beginning. So we're going to separate it down into 3 parts. And the first bit was, I wanted to get a sense of, first of all, how Mary felt the day after an ultramarathon. Ultramarathon, post-ultramarathon, day 1, ultramagnum. How are you feeling?
I feel surprisingly good, actually. I'm chuffed to bits. I feel pretty mobile. After my first marathon, I could not walk for like 3 days. Yeah, it was a bit of a painful night. Like, I could feel the aches and twinges and tweaks. So I was kind of like moving around a bit in the night trying to get comfortable. But yeah, got out of bed pretty fresh.
So physically, we're good. What about mentally? Where are you at?
Feels like a bit of a blur, but I feel really happy. I feel really proud. Yeah, I feel quite strong mentally.
Not tired?
Not really, I'm quite buzzy.
So what you're actually saying is, post-ultramarathon day 1, all is rosy.
Yeah, all good.
Good. Day 2. So that was frustrating, because I was in worse shape than you. How are you feeling today, day 2?
Really tired. I've actually been really productive today. I think I've been on a bit of a high, going back to work, feeling quite hardcore. But end of the day, I'm like, I just need to put my pyjamas on and go to bed.
Yeah, I need to go to sleep, but I've got to create this video. But we're both feeling it. I'm supposed to train today. That's not happening. I didn't even run an ultramarathon. I ran a 10-miler coming Sunday, by the way. There's probably a ting there that I put on that. But
I think, yeah, physically and mentally, I feel quite good. Like, I'm quite buzzy and way, 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 way better than I expected. But I've got a tiredness inside. and I need to roll with that.
So what we did was we put it on Instagram, just a story, just asking if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask to ask Mary about her experience of the ultramarathon, things that she learnt. So before we ask those questions, is there anything that you think you specifically learnt that you will take on from the ultramarathon?
Yeah, definitely. First thing, which is probably a very powerful lesson, is that I'm capable of more than I realised, mentally and physically, which is a pretty good life lesson.
Amazing life lesson. The mind quits way before the body does, and your mind didn't quit, neither did your body, and you ran 50 kilometres and previously hadn't run over 24 kilometres since November. So I think you learnt something valuable there. I think you learnt something valuable there.
Yeah. Secondly, don't take paracetamol in a race in tablet form, but because it's given me a stitch in 3 races, and I find that so hard to come back from, but that's given me fear of doing that. But I was getting an aching back and ache, so I wonder if there's like a liquid paracetamol. One thing I was pleased with is that my pace didn't drop off, because I thought my pace always drops off, but I actually...
No, that is a learning, because you
on.
learned that you paced it consistently. You didn't start too hard, and therefore you were able to maintain it throughout. And that probably says it was all averages of about 5-minute kilometres, wasn't it? Which bodes pretty well for...
That's my marathon target pace.
Yeah, that's your marathon target pace.
But yeah, even my 48th kilometre was my fastest, 4:44. So I don't have to fall apart. I can stick in.
Things learnt. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready. Born ready.
Benji Robinson wants to know, what was your highest and lowest point mentally, and how did you overcome it? I mean, you probably touched on the lowest point was your stitch, wasn't it? I know that was physically, but then mentally it put you in a hole.
The stitch was the hardest thing. My hardest exposures were number 1 and number 5. Number 1, it was like a mental game of trying to get going, and why isn't it easy? And I've got to do this 6 times. And that was a bit weird, because I needed to let it not affect me. But that 1 and 5 were my hardest. Probably the stitch, physically, I thought could blow me out altogether.
And your highest point?
Exposure 4 was amazing, and some friends came out and banged pans and pots, and we randomly saw about 4 people we knew on this particular exposure, and I felt really comfortable, and I was flying. And the finish.
The finish was a good one.
That was a bit high and low, because it was weird emotion.
So this is a question that's pretty relevant to the closure part, actually, is how can you be satisfied with the challenge once you've completed it, rather than aiming for the next? And that's 18 Cool Hand Luke.
Well, I'm definitely not over it, so I'm gonna relive it. I've watched the video like 3 times, which is probably shouldn't admit. It's a bit embarrassing, but it was just such a special day, and I want to just remember it so much, because when you're in it, I was so focused, and it's almost a bit of a blur, so it's really good watching it back and reliving it. So I'm not gonna be over it too soon. Well, I think luckily for me it went really well, so I've got no regrets. I don't feel I made any big mistakes, so it's quite lucky, because I have made lots of mistakes in races before, but I feel really satisfied with how the whole thing went.
Okay.
So,
marathon with a crowd, but Mason the runner asked, marathon with a crowd but non-stop, or pylon ultra with breaks in between, which was harder?
I was debating this with someone today at work, and what I've learned about races is you break it down anyway. So like when I was doing my 5k, for example, I had to just focus on that kilometre and then let the previous thing go and just focus on the next, whatever it was. So if you have a dip, don't let that affect you going forwards. And because it was so broken up, I felt like it was easier to do that, actually. You could really park it and refocus and refresh. So for me, it worked really, really well. But it's hard not having crowds and people. It's hard running on your own. Anyone that's done a virtual event will relate to that. So I think there's strengths and challenges to both.
So that is closure. You learn your lessons, you take what you can, you pick the bones and you move on, right? So we've learned our lessons, we know what works, what doesn't work. The second part of this kind of transitional process is that you need to have separation. You need to have recovery. And what I've done in this case is I've just said to Mary, as I would with most athletes that would do long distance stuff, 2 weeks off, guilt-free. You can train if you want to, but you absolutely don't have to, and there's no structure.
Yeah. Quite looking forward to it.
So you can run just if you feel like it, but you absolutely don't have to.
Yeah. And it's nice, and I think that will reset my head. And then I'll feel like hopefully really refreshed and ready to go into a new training block in 2 weeks.
Well, here's the theory behind it really, is that you want to get yourself to the point where you're kind of itching to go again, where you're like, I don't actually like this hanging around anymore, I don't like doing nothing.
Yeah.
But it is a guilt-free 2 weeks. You honestly just do what you want to do. If you want to train, if you want to go out for a run, I would only say just keep it easy. If you're doing long distance stuff, I wouldn't put some speed or tempo in those 2 weeks, just to really take dial it back. And then finally, just to make sure that you stay in the game and you're not aimless and you're not just like a headless chicken, you need this renewed sense of purpose or focus. What is coming up in the future for you?
I have got, obviously, London Marathon I've mentioned already, October, hopefully, if we can get back and not have to quarantine, and there's lots of factors there. But I've got a half marathon on June the 13th.
Which is where?
Eton Dorney. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, so it's a run-through event, Eton Dorney half marathon, which if anybody wants to come and meet us there, then by all means, please do.
Sign up, join in the fun. So that's quite a good distance away. I think that's about 6 weeks or 7 weeks.
Yeah, and we would love to see people there before we move to Thailand. If anyone has followed the channel for a while and is looking to do a half marathon, then we will be there. I'm thinking maybe I cycle there and then run because I'm deep in Ironman training, but Mary will be running, no doubt.
Yeah.
I might be running. I will be there. But do you know what? It wouldn't matter if Mary didn't have a race this season after this. What would matter is that she has a goal, maybe even for just next season. That's what I mean by a renewed sense of purpose and focus. You can then just train the rest of the season if you want to. It's nice to have a goal later in the season. You have an early season goal, late season goal, but if you want to just have a season, if you want to just have a goal for next season, that's great as well.
And actually, that's a big thing for me because we're moving to Thailand this summer. My next thing is all these Asian adventures and all these amazing races that we've found that we want to run in different parts of the world and just have something totally different.
2 more things to say, really, and the reason that I say that you have to have your down period after your up period if you're training and racing is because you can only concentrate, you can only give it full intensity, you can only have this purpose for a certain amount of time, and for every amount that you focus on your training, there is a similar, not as long, but there is a similar amount of relaxation or downtime needed. It's actually, believe it or not, it's a magician trick. So all the things where you have to focus on where the ball is in the cup, they move the cups around for a long time and you have to concentrate. It's when you then relax after that is when they move things around. It's the relaxed period. If you're not careful and if you don't do the recovery right, then you'll go into this next training block or whatever and you'll either get injured or you just suffer from burnout or staleness or plateau.
Yeah, and I've had quite a busy period because it was like the 5k PB, the half marathon PB, straight into that. So I think I've actually been quite good because I've not been putting pressure on myself. I've just been enjoying it. But yeah, I want to make sure I feel fresh and energized and ready to go.
Give yourself time. Oh, and one more thing. We have a name for the community that we're all part of. We think. You've got to let us know what you think. And it was suggested originally by Robert Howe. A couple of people have suggested it, and I can't believe that I didn't see it. But just something that represents the delightful messiness of learning and running and the joy of being part of it and the happiness and just that mix is that we're just a bunch of messhaps. Which I love. It just sums up this community of imperfection and happiness and joy. So if you feel like you're a messhap, if you feel like you're part of a bunch of messhaps like we are, then that's our community name and let's get things started.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, thanks,
Good
Robert.
job.
And thanks for everyone that suggested some
there were
brilliant
some really
community
good
names.
ones.
There were some bangers in there, but just messhaps really spoke to us because we do feel like we're just that ragtag bunch of just people that are finding the happiness in it all.
You're a ragtag.
I am a ragtag. See you Sunday for my race experience when I did the Staplehurst 10 miler. I'm putting a lot of tings on my...
Can I have one on my teeth?